So say, can you see? How about the USA men's hockey team and women's men's hockey team in overtime beating the maple syrup out of those Canadians? You got to love it, Joe. You got to love it. Gold, the first time that we have touched the gold in men's hockey since 1980. Miracle on ice. And yet here we are and here we stand. Welcome in, good sir. Blake Ruffino, Joe DeLeone, Ruffino and Joe show. We don't talk hockey on this show. However, we're going to make an exception. What a week for the Americans.
Dude, well, the women's team was supposed to dog the Canadian team on Thursday and went to overtime and they still ended up winning. The men's team, I think a lot of people realize how lopsided the series has been. They have never beaten Canada in a gold medal match.
Yes.
Ever. They're 0-2. The Canadian team was consistently smoking them, and there was no expectation that they were going to win. Now, I think that there was a lot of buildup that this was like as big as the Miracle on Ice game. It wasn't, because they were only a 1.5 point dog, 1.5 goal dog in this game, but that's freaking awesome. Now, I don't think anyone thought that they were going to win this game.
And two, you got to remember, so I didn't agree with Portnoy. You got to remember what was happening globally during the time of that's a completely different thing. The only thing globally right now that's happening is I'm assuming the president of the United States is going to say that now he gets the rights to buy Canada or something stupid like that. But you can't take away the world context of 1980 with a bunch of college kids.
Yeah. That's why I know a lot of people were pissed off at Portnoy for saying that, but at the same time, he's not really wrong. We weren't alive for that, and that was a momentous country on country battle. This is just cool because screw it, Canada. Hockey's not even supposed to be in the stratosphere of one of our best sports. That is the equivalent of if we squared off with Canada in football. It really is. That is how deep Canada's culture of hockey and all their best athletes playing hockey. All they do there is play hockey.
Well, and hold on now. I know you're not a massive baseball guy. You've seen all these MLB baseball stars coming out like Trout, Aaron Judge, Paul Skeens, Alex Bregman, etc. After Trout struck out to Shohei Ohtani, Japanese won the World Baseball Classic. It pissed a lot of these USA dudes off. Okay, Aaron Judge came out, if you remember, and said something to the extent of he tweeted, and he never tweets, and he says something crazy like, "This isn't happening again." And I'm like, all right, now y'all pissed off the big fella. Now you really pissed him off. So look, this is a big day. The USA men's hockey team does bring home gold. And Joe, look, I feel like for the first time in a long while, I felt like for once, because sports splits you up and everybody roots for somebody else and you're always divided, for once I felt like the country was united in this. I didn't see anything down my feed saying, screw the United States. Or screw the team that I'm rooting for. And I'm it felt fun to actually all be in unison and watching this. But when the high stick happened and we had the power play, I was like, if we don't get it here, we're going to lose. And then all of a sudden you go overtime, 3-on-3. What a stand there in the third period to be able to hold. And Hughes, what a dog. I'm buying a Hughes jersey. I don't care what anybody tells me.
Oh, you can be a New Jersey Devils fan. I already have a Hughes jersey.
I'm completely fine with that. But he is probably my favorite here. It was a really, really fun game to watch. And just take part of the entire 2 weeks here was really fun. So we're not here to talk about hockey, even though I do think we could do a post game to this hockey game.
Seriously.
We are here to talk about the top 5 best corners returning to college football. We will break that down. Joey Aguilar gets denied. Thank God. There's a couple of things that we need to discuss. Joe, we haven't talked about Tennessee and what they're going to do at quarterback now. I think we need to get into a little bit of that. And then did the NCAA's wording on Friday really bring this to light of them suspending teams, fining teams, and taking stats away and vacating wins if they keep getting sued in state court. We'll talk about that as well. Jacrius Peak, it appears per Matt Zenitz of CBS that he has sustained a very significant knee injury. We'll talk about that as well. And if we have time at the end, Kurt Cignetti signs an extension, making him the highest paid head coach in the country. But nevertheless, we are live. Everyone do us a favor. USA in this hoe. Hit the like and share to all those groups. If you're on Facebook and to all those social media pages, you're watching us, listening to us on YouTube, like, subscribe, notification bell. Please hit that subscribe button. That's all we ask. That's all we ask. Hit that subscribe button. Wherever you listen to podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe. Every Ruffino and Joe show is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. Download the FD Sportsbook app today. Use your mobile device in doing so. If you have thoughts, questions, and concerns when you use the mobile app, go to FanDuel.com/RG for more details. Set your preferences like I do. All right, Joe, let's get into it here. We continue on our path of ranking the top 5 position players per the position that they play. Well, today we go to the cornerback position. Joe, who are your top 5 corners in college football returning in 2026?
Number 1, I've got Leonard Moore from Notre Dame. Number 2, I got Brandon Finney from Oregon. 3, I'm going Kelly Jones from Mississippi State. Number 4, Ellis Robinson, the 4th from UGA. And then lastly, Bryce Pollock, Texas Tech.
My top 5 are, well, not completely different here other than yours, other than 2. But I have Leonard Moore of Notre Dame at number 1, Brandon Finney of Oregon at number 2, Ellis Robinson the 4th at UGA number 3, DJ Pickett at LSU number 4, and Dijon Lee from Alabama at number 5. Joe, let's start off with number 1 here. We talked about Leonard Moore on Wednesday, and I thought the conversation that you and I had then was we kind of prefaced it going into today was how teams stopped throwing away from him or started throwing away from him, and he still almost led the nation in interceptions with 5. But Leonard Moore, I mean, maybe you could have a discussion about him potentially not being the best corner. You know, does Finney take a big step in year 2? I just don't know if there's a lot of argument right now. Leonard Moore is the number 1 for most people and should be.
Yeah, well, I think he should be the number 1 corner on a consensus level. And I think that there's a lot
personally.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers
of like people putting Finney at number 1 because of the playoff run.
Yeah.
Like, okay, like I guess I understand that, but continue.
Shouldn't see anyone doing that. There's a lot of things for this that really, obviously, I'm a Notre Dame fan. This is the one time I'm allowed to be kind of blindly biased because it's not like I'm sticking a guy who was a possible top 5 guy at number 1. No, he's number 1 for a reason. The NFL is going to highly regard him. Tall, long, physical kid, great at the catch point. Teams throw away from him, but when they do throw his way, he's automatically getting in front of that ball. He was able to force picks off of quarterbacks who stupidly thought that they could try and get a completion off of him. His story and his path, I think, is what makes him even more fun to watch and even more fun to root for, because he was a 3-star recruit, super unheralded, in a way kind of like Kyle Hamilton, but a little bit different, where Hamilton was not a big name recruit until the very last second and was committed to Notre Dame and then jumped into the mix. And then the rest was history. For Moore to have got on the field when Benjamin Morrison went down with an injury, and Notre Dame fans were, quite honestly, they were concerned. They were worried. They didn't know what to expect from a true freshman coming onto the field. And then first game, it was, oh man, this Moore kid's pretty good. Second, third game, oh, he might be the best corner on the team. And then on that playoff run to get to the national championship, for him to have played at the level that he did and the reliability that he had, to the point where Ohio State was throwing away from him and they were targeting Christian Gray aggressively, it paints for what Leonard Moore is becoming. And I think that the 7 PBUs, the 5 interceptions from this past season, confirmed.
He had 11.
I was going off PFF tracks PBUs a little bit differently. So
okay.
11. Well, I'll take the bigger number.
Yeah, Sports Reference has it at 11.
I'll take the bigger number. I was going off of what PFF had. Regardless, he had such a shutdown ability, and he is going to be potentially a top 10 pick in next year's draft in a class that already has a lot of really good players.
Well, I think so. Let's go off that 11 number because I deal with Sports Reference more than I deal with PFF because that we'll just leave that for another day. 16 times he got thrown at where he broke the ball away or he intercepted it. I think that is the biggest thing. Now, Joe, from a tackling standpoint, like I don't, there are times where I'm like, okay, well, maybe that could have been a little bit better. But just from a coverage standpoint, I don't think that there's anybody else. And by the way, Leonard Moore is not the only 3-star that I thought had massive seasons last year. Like the guy that replaced Mansour DeLeone at LSU and PJ Woodland. In the times that he started, he had 9 PBUs. So I think that there were, 3 classes ago, the best corners you can make the argument were Leonard Moore who was a 3-star, and PJ Woodland, who was also a 3-star. So some younger guys kind of coming up in these ranks here that are doing some dominating things. Again, Joe, it is the consensus because of 16 times you threw at him, 11 times he broke the passes up, and 5 times he intercepted it. That is elite level stuff. I want to see him get a little bit better in tackling in space, but I thought that there were times where I'm just like, dude, why are you even throwing to his side of the field? And those are the things that I look at him and say, last year when you look at him, and like I go down a game log as an example. I had it up, but I didn't. But I look at from a game perspective, every single game that he played last year in the game log of 2025. And I look at, Joe, the big moments, right? Yes, you can talk about the A&M, some of the struggles, but he had a massive interception there. At the end of the season, he had 2 big picks versus Syracuse and Stanford. But I think for me, Joe, it's when he went against elite competition, like elite wide receivers, he had multiple passes broken up. So those are the things that I look at with him, that you're going up against elite counterparts, and you had the 2 PBUs versus A&M that were really massive to get them back in that game, even though they lost.
Yeah, I think that the other layer that comes with this and why he fits not more than anybody, but like why there's the almost established no argument is that he has also consistently made big plays when Notre Dame has needed him to as well. Like that's the other thing too that I think I really, really like about Leonard Moore is that the reliability and the clutchness to the way that he's been able to step up. But not to already like bump over to, I think that kind of sets the stage for the guy that we both had at number 2, which was Brandon Finney Jr., who is going to be a true sophomore, who is Leonard Moore-esque in the degree that he burst onto the scene, started playing early, former highly recruited kid, but wasn't a 5-star, wasn't one of the top corners, wasn't one of these guys like DJ Pickett or Dejon Lee, and played at the highest level. He made the biggest plays when his team needed him to the most, especially in the playoff. The pick that he had against Texas Tech was massive for sealing that game and establishing that Oregon was going to win the ball game. They had control of the game the entire time, but that was the moment like, wow, all right, Oregon's locking this thing down, and Brandon Finney has established himself as this clear top premier corner in the country. He was 3rd as a freshman in the country in receiving percentage allowed. Just 40% of the time that he was targeted, passes were completed. And then he also had the 3 interceptions. He was 7th in passer rating allowed as well when quarterbacks were targeting him. So for him to be top 10 in 2 of the most important statistical categories for a cornerback, that's unbelievable. And I think that it's almost a no-brainer to put him at number 2.
I think he bursted on the scene in a high-profile game in Game 1 versus Indiana when he had the interception. And when you have that interception, okay, and it's a pick 6 versus Indiana, the national champion. Yeah. Then you had 2 PBUs in that game. That was when he really emerged. However, I don't know if that's his biggest quality. You talked about Texas Tech. How many times was he coming down and lighting dudes up? I think that, Joe, for me, probably signifies more of him being more of an all-around corner than some of these guys on this list is his ability to come down in the box when needing to and make a play. Coverage skills, I thought that there were times as a true freshman, like even going back to the Indiana game, where he was a little out in space and he was, had some freshman mistakes. Who wouldn't? But I think it's the big plays that he continued to have down the stretch and constantly being consistent with the big plays that he had. And look, when I remember you and I, when we had the conversation a couple of not this past draft class, or not draft class, recruiting class, but the class before. If you remember, there were 5 guys that Oregon brought in that were top 50 corners. Like they obliterated the corner room, like obliterated it. And he was 4 or 5, but I forget all of the guys that were in that class. But it was Finney that comes in that as a true freshman starts and makes those plays, even though you brought in 2 5-star corners at Oregon. And I forget their names off the top of my head. But it was him that. Yeah, if you don't mind, I would love. Who are those other corners that were ahead of him in that Oregon class?
Yeah. Well, I'm looking. Continue what you were saying. Yeah.
But anyway, he's the one that emerges. And I think a long corner at 6'1", a long reach, and he put it on full display.
Yeah, that is the last part about this that's intriguing.
Who were the other?
You bring up? It was Naeem Offord and Trey McNutt, because that was the other thing that I recall when I was doing preseason prep for Oregon, and there was a lot of talk about this. Was what was really interesting from what I remember, and maybe I'm a little off base here, Oregon fans. I remember there was a little bit of a discussion, not like a panic, but a man who's going to start at corner for us? Is one of these young dudes, Offord or McNutt, going to step in? Can we trust them? It was a lot of uncertainty. You put Muhammad to the NFL, so you're trying to navigate building out your lineup. And Finney started to build momentum during fall camp and ended up starting, and the rest was history. I always come back to, if a kid is good enough to start as a true freshman, it usually means something. And I think that the final piece was him starting over those 2 kids, McNutt and Offord, who probably are going to go on to become really good starting outside corners on this team as well. But the fact that he already established himself that early, it is Leonard Moore-esque, and it is a testament to how good he is as a player.
Completely agree with you there. It's going to be really interesting to see how that young team at Oregon continues to build. You got a lot of pieces that are returning along your defensive line. You got a lot of pieces at corner that you have, and a very talented team. It's going to be fun and interesting to watch Oregon and see what they're able to do this upcoming season. So we'll see.
Yeah.
All right. You have Kelly Jones of Mississippi State at number 3.
Yeah.
Robinson at number 3. But let's start off with Kelly Jones.
Dude, I know you're probably going to come in here and saying something about him and try to downplay him. When I was doing my notes, he was on the radar. I'm doing a lot more digging. I'm watching his tape, and I am bought in. Now, I didn't do a full breakdown report on this kid. I'm going to probably save that for the summer, but I got a feeling that this is going to be a kid I give a pretty early grade to for the 2027 NFL draft. We're talking about a 6'4" kid who looks like a linebacker playing outside corner, a former quarterback for Mississippi State, who was number 1 in the country this past year in receiving percentage allowed, 28%. The next closest player was 35%. He was that good. He did not allow any catches. On top of this, 9 PBUs per PFF. I'm sure that number is probably a little different based on what you get off of Sports Reference.
Sports Reference has it at 11. Okay. Passes defensed 11. He had 2 versus Texas, 2 versus Florida, 1 versus A&M, and 2 versus Southern Miss.
He's still a top 10 kid in pass breakups, 2 interceptions, and then he was 19th in passer rating allowed. Statistically, he has the best numbers out of any corner that we could talk about. It's a little harder, a little more nuanced, because if you come in here talking about just pass breakups and interceptions, sometimes they can be deceiving because it means they're getting targeted a lot. The fact that he was that good at not allowing receptions really stands out. When you get a 6'4" corner, Blake, you have to be a really good athlete in order for that to translate to you being a really good corner. Sometimes teams will just grab kids and throw these tall kids out there and hope that they work out. But he explodes upfield. He opens up and runs really, really well. I'm intrigued to see what he does this season because I think that there's a real path for Kelly Jones to establish himself and confirm himself as an All-American caliber player and a player that is a top 3 corner in the sport. I'm willing to bank on this because I think he is truly, truly gifted.
So for me, okay, we brought this into I don't want to say that he's not a top 5 corner because I don't disagree that he should be in the discussion of the list.
Okay.
However, Trinidad Chambliss had 4 passing touchdowns versus Mississippi State. Now, if memory serves me correctly, Harrison Wallace had 1 and Stribling had 1 or 2. I'm pretty sure, if memory serves me, that it minimum 1, but I thought 2 went on Kelly Jones. And that's just what I remember. More physical guys on the boundary went after him, and you had an offensive staff that went after the boundary for Mississippi State. Again, I would need to go back because, to your point, I have not dug enough into him. So for that alone, I don't know enough.
Okay, so per PFF, he didn't allow this. This doesn't seem right. It says he didn't allow a reception.
It's statistically impossible.
Yeah, that doesn't.
So you mean to tell me that four touchdowns went to the far right boundary? That didn't happen because Stribling had 2 touchdowns on fade routes on the top left boundary. That's not true. That didn't happen. I'm not trying to call you out for being wrong here because I do think that doesn't track for me because I do remember the game and I do remember. Remember, Stribling, it was close. Trinidad throws a fade on the top part of the boundary to Stribling. Then you have Harrison Wallace coming back on the other far right boundary. So regardless, they didn't mix it up like that, Joe. I mean, look, the thing that we need to know about PFF too, they only grade 30% of the games or 30% of the game. I'll need to go back and watch it. So again, newsflash, I can be wrong here. So, right? Like I can be wrong.
It's probably somewhere in between.
Probably
he was only targeted once, and that doesn't. That was the game that I started watching the Ole Miss game as my context for him. I recall him being targeted more than once. Maybe my memory is also, but forget about that though for a second.
Forget about that. Correct.
Physically, he is a very rare athlete, and he has the numbers to back it up. And I think that in a world where we've got these skyscraper corners, he is the mold of a player that goes on to become a shutdown player for his final season. He was so good as a redshirt sophomore, he was considering entering this upcoming draft from what I've been told.
Well, look, he is a good corner. He deserves to be somewhere on this list. I'm not taking it away from him at all. At all. And I think here's the thing, too. You brought up the biggest thing that we should hit on, the position change. How much experience does he really have at corner? So that's another thing here that should be discussed. Sidebar on that. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm an idiot. Some people would agree with that. Are you surprised that we have 3 guys on these lists that are 6'4" and above?
No, because I think, and this is something that, we talk about a lot from a roster development, player development circumstance of when certain types of players come up, teams are going to try and copy that. That doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't just happen over a year. You got to consider this is a little bit different because he wasn't a corner recruit, but with Pickett and with Dejon Lee, Leonard Moore is also taller. I think that growing up now, a lot of these high school kids, these taller guys want to play corner. I think coaches then entice those kids to want to play corner because they realize that there is more of an intriguing path to get to the NFL. If you can move really well at that size, you're incredibly unique as a prospect. So I think that this is, Richard Sherman set the table for all these kids growing up to end up playing cornerback to now they go to college football. It is a process that kind of takes 10 years. So
yeah,
I think it's just all the time.
The last time a process happened like this, you might have still been in high school, but it was when Antonio Gates, Jimmy Graham, Gronk, and all of those, what we would normally perceive as defensive end body types, then we're going to the tight end room, right? Like I remember there was a massive shift in Joe, I remember in college, there was a problem at edge like that because all these dudes wanted to play tight end. And so that would I don't want to equate it to that because there's 3 Hall of Famers in that, right? Like that's a massive thing to say. But you had these basketball guys or long guys like you would look at them normally would play in like Julius Peppers. Like if Peppers could go back, would he play tight end? Like that's what I think about. So regardless of that, it's a really interesting conversation. And you don't see massive wide receivers coming in the draft anymore.
Well, so that was the other thing that popped in my head is that it's kind of funny the way that we've moved where we've gone from
Randy Moss. Remember?
Yes.
Randy Moss came in. Everybody wanted the 6'4", 6'5" guy on the boundary that can run like AJ Green and Julio Jones is 6'3", 6'4". Like everybody wanted those level of guys. And now, I'm not trying to make this
Tyreek Hill, the Malik Neighbors, the Jamar Chases, the Justin Jeffersons. It's like 6'1" to 5'9", and you need to be quick. Like that's what's now more valuable with a lot of these offenses because most of them are yak oriented now. Most offenses in the NFL and in college football are get the ball to our playmakers in space and let them go to work.
Well, you're going to laugh about this, but who's the elite safety for the Chargers?
Derwin James.
Derwin James. Remember when he was he said something like about Hunter Renfrow, and they were joking around. You mean the encyclopedia salesman? He goes, that ain't no encyclopedia salesman. And I think about that. And I think about the shifty dudes that you're mentioning. I know we're kind of on a tangent here, but
I could talk player personnel philosophy for 2 hours. You're on to something here. It's a very interesting trend.
Well, because 3 guys on this list are 6'4" corners,
right?
So
I don't think we have a single guy that we're bringing up. I'm going to double check out how tall Ellis Robinson is. He's 6 foot.
6'2". Okay.
How big's Pollock? Well, all right. Do you want to jump over to talking about
Ellis Robinson?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's you could put him anywhere on this list, and
I do too. A guy that I thought, Joe, had a really bad start of the season, really bad. The Tennessee game, really bad. And then as Georgia started to ascend, and I think this is what people don't realize about Georgia too, a lot like Oregon. God bless it, they got a lot of dudes coming back that were big contributors. Like a lot of first-time starters on that defense. And then Ellis Robinson comes back last year. Joe, halfway through the season, he had 4 picks. The back half of the season, when it clicked for him, he had 4 picks. Here's the only thing with me with Ellis Robinson. Ain't got nothing to do with talent. Ain't got nothing to do with tackling. Ain't got nothing to do with coverage. Mentals. Remember the Bama game and the stupid penalty at the end where he's jumping on top of the pile?
Yeah.
It's a mental thing with him. I feel as if that I'm seeing an athlete that was better than everybody his entire life, and now you can't do that. You quite simply are not going to outrun Brazil. You're quite simply not going to outrun some of these guys. And I think he kind of put his head down and went to work that post-Bama game and went off. I think in between 2 and 5, you can make the argument for Ellis Robinson, because I thought that the back half of his season was that dominant, where teams are not throwing at him. Like, I mean, Ole Miss, as an example, Joe, I thought that, he gave up a couple of plays, but then all of a sudden Trinidad started going the opposite direction. And so that was the part for me that, I look at this and just say to myself, he's one of the best corners in college football coming back into his third year.
Yeah, and I think that you just talked about there a little bit of the slow start. What makes his accomplishments so much more impressive is he finished the year 8th in receiving percentage allowed. The catch rate.
I would love to know if you took away that Tennessee game. I'd love to know what that completion percentage is.
Yeah, it'd probably take a while to pull, which it's easy to pull and check regardless.
Right.
That I think paints the picture down the line, how he finished the season. And there's a lot of guys, there's a lot of young dudes on the Georgia defense. This is why we're so high on Georgia for this upcoming year, Blake, is that there's a lot of these guys at the beginning of the year were going through some growing pains, and they had to rely on underclassmen to be the premier guys. And when you do that, it leads to your defense underperforming. But Kirby Smart is such a good coach. He's such a good defensive coach that he was able to get the most out of him and to get the most out of Elijah Griffin and all these other guys that are going to be coming up. There probably will be players that we end up discussing that aren't even on our radar right now, that we don't even think about, that end up becoming all SEC type players, all American type players, draft prospects, because Kirby is just so good at getting so much out of the players on his team. Can I just bring up with you, I've got no issue with you putting one of these guys, putting Pickett or putting Lee out there, but I think that you're foregoing a lot of players in what is a really talented upperclassman corner year to fit two of these freshmen. I think that these guys are going to be really good players as sophomores, and I mentioned them in my breakout players. I mentioned Pickett in my breakout players, but I would even go as far as to say I think that Xavier Brown would need to be brought into the discussion before I'd be ready to bring up DeJon Lee. I'm not saying that DeJon Lee's not good.
No, I almost put 2 LSU guys on here, so you better be glad I only put 1.
I just think that this is a really
because I really do believe. Here's a hot take for your ass. All right, go back and watch when Mansour went down, and you tell me who the best defensive player on LSU's team is. It's not DJ Pickett.
No, I know, and I understand that. I've got no problems with acknowledging that. I just think nationwide there are a lot of guys that
I don't disagree.
Need to be brought into the discussion before them.
Here's my defense for the both of them. Joe, I'm doing my best Joe DeLeone impression.
I knew you were going to say this.
You know what I'm doing. They're going to go off, both of them. They're going to go off. They're too talented. I'm sorry. Let me tell you this, because I have Bryce Polk written down too, or Bryce Pollock written down too from Texas Tech, and I just made the conscious decision where I just think these two guys are just flat better. I hate to say that.
I don't agree with that part of it. That physically, these guys are definitely better than Pollock.
Correct.
Pollock, statistically, I felt had to be in here because last year he had one of the best years for a corner. 4th in passer rating allowed, 5 interceptions, 50% receiving percentage allowed, was one of the best in the country. But Lee and Pickett absolutely can surpass that. That's why I don't have an issue with it. I just think other positions we could do this. Defensive tackle, we were fine doing this because there's a kind of a reset going on at defensive tackle. Corner, I think there's just too many names to go all projection.
You're not completely wrong. I just think they're so freaking talented, man, that I just can't keep them out of it.
Yeah.
So for an example, DJ Pickett had 3 picks. Are we going to take away the 3 that got thrown on for something that had nothing to do with him? Let's just hypothetically throw this out there for Pickett. What if there's not flags on the 3 picks that he caught? And you have a true freshman with 6 picks. Then what?
Well, then we're having a crazy conversation about him. Pickett's the one that I think is the most defensible.
Well, and here's another thing. The sack production. from the boundary. From the boundary. I mean, we can't take away him tracking down Trinidad. It's indefensible.
He's an insane athlete.
He's an insane athlete. Now, in reference to Dijon Lee, this is the one that I feel like I needed to defend the most because there was times he got burned like Canada in a hockey match. I mean, it's just the truth. He would miss in bump and run coverage. Here's the problem with him for me. I think Kane Womack stinks. I think he stinks as DC. And asking a guy who is a cover 3 corner to play bump and run when he wasn't ready was foolish. I mean, I'm just being blunt. Put him in quarters, let him roam, and let him be a dude. But the fact that he wouldn't, it just shows how big of an idiot he is.
Like with Lee, I think that where I have a little bit of trouble is I think that there is this obvious path where he becomes a ridiculous shutdown player. Pickett had less freshman moments. Finney had very few freshman moments.
No, they kept throwing it at Mansour. What idiots?
Yeah, seriously.
What idiots?
96 yards allowed when targeted against Auburn was his worst game, and that was the one I was trying to double check which game it was. That was the one that kind of lingered in my head. The game against Tennessee, he wasn't as bad, but he gave up 45 yards and gave up a couple of big plays against Indiana as well. Only gave up 30 yards, but I just think that there needs to be I need to see the progression from him first before I can crown him a top 5 guy.
No, I don't disagree with that. I don't think you're wrong there. I almost put Pollock in there, but I'm just like, I can't do it. Okay. I'm not going to do it. All right. Let's move on here. Joey Aguilar, the Tennessee or now former Tennessee quarterback, was denied a preliminary injunction to play for Tennessee this upcoming season. This coming off of Friday, the NCAA sending out the statement to all of their teams that if you keep suing us in open court, we're going to start taking stats away. We're going to start fining you. And we're going to start doing all of these different things. And we're going to reject that you went, and we're going to make players ineligible. Joey Aguilar then has his preliminary injunction denied. Now, I don't think the NCAA and their statements on Friday has anything to do with Joey Aguilar being denied. However, the right decision was made here. Joe, on Thursday, I went dumb on this situation with the NCAA and then going into Joey Aguilar. The right decision is made. There are multiple things that can be true at once. You can think that the NCAA stinks. You can think that some of the things that they do is idiotic, which I would agree upon. However, there are things that we need to defend here. The Joey Aguilar thing is one of them, because you can't have a guy who came in 2019 into college still playing college football. It cannot happen. So I commend the judge in this. I commend the NCAA for trying to give some enforcement on eligibility rules. And I think that just because you hate the NCAA doesn't mean that you should not back them in situations like this. And the last thing that I'd say about that part, Joe, is, you know what the biggest hypocritical thing is in college football right now? It's fans in one regard. It's that they will continue to come out and say, screw the NCAA, but then complain about eligibility rules.
Yeah.
You can't have both. So I am glad that this happened, and I think it sets a precedent for the sport for this not to happen. I lied. Last thing. There are other sports where JUCO is a big deal, like college baseball. A lot of kids play JUCO in college baseball. Could you imagine some of these guys that have gotten drafted after leaving JUCO and going to a team in the SEC, Big Ten, ACC, that get drafted, if those guys had 2 to 3 more years of eligibility, if Joey Aguilar would have won this case. So I think it's a big deal and for college sports in general. And the right overall decision was made here to deny Joey Aguilar's injunction.
So that is, and by the way, they have 30 days to appeal the ruling, but it's basically expected that wouldn't do anything. This is the one aspect of this that I think is generally misunderstood, is that the injunction that was granted to Diego Pavia for a similar case does not mean that he won the case.
Correct.
It is
a temporary restraining order, correct?
That I don't remember. But the point with that though, Blake, is that the NCAA, that this could come back around and could end up going against Pavia, could end up going against Aguilar if Aguilar had been given eligibility. On3 published a really interesting story about a 1975 basketball player, Lonnie Shelton, who had signed a pro basketball contract. And he argued in court that the contract that he signed was invalid. Judge granted him a preliminary injunction to let him return for a final season. They went to the Sweet 16, and he finished his career. Months later, after he was done with school for good, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals overruled the decision, and then the NCAA, once they had that power, then used the ability to vacate wins. They forced Oregon State to forfeit 15 wins in which Shelton played. So this is one thing I am not close, don't have enough context for the Diego Pavia situation, but for Pavia, for all these players that went to court to sue for eligibility, this can still happen. And Aguilar not getting eligibility was not a guarantee. And that was one thing that I personally misunderstood. And I didn't really understand that context. Now I get it.
You know who didn't?
Who?
Tennessee. You know why? Because Tennessee went after Sam Leavitt. They went after all these portal quarterbacks and missed.
Yes.
Because that was their ultimate thought, that he probably wasn't going to win this. And Tennessee showed by their actions of going after other quarterbacks.
Right. We talked about this. This was a Hail Mary, the final aggressive push to get him back and eligible to have their own separate case. And it didn't work in there. I actually think this might be a take that Tennessee fans don't agree with. This is probably better for them, that this doesn't, they don't get the injunction, and then it ends up getting reversed later on, and then they have to vacate wins. What if Aguilar played just 10% better than last year, and with a better roster at Tennessee, you go on a college football playoff run, and then this comes and shoots you in the foot, where everything that you just accomplished in 2026 gets blown up because of this desire to have him on the field. I think at the end of the day, Blake, yes, it is true. The one area where the NCAA deserves to have power is controlling eligibility. They should not have power over NIL, because that is supposed to be something that is parallel to the sport. But eligibility has to be something that they can maintain control over. Otherwise, it goes rampant, and then you've got guys who are playing for 10 years, and they become career college quarterbacks, and we don't need that.
Well, when's the last time you heard of a kid being ineligible because of academics?
Seriously.
Because they got sued in court and says if the university allows them to play, you don't dictate what a university can and can't allow. And to that part, I kind of like, yeah, you kind of can't. As an example, some of these players in the playoff that went in the portal and didn't enroll until late. Well, if the university allows them to enroll, who are you to say that they can't? What makes you say that? But this is a different beast. He was here in 2019. Joe, he was playing college athletics before COVID happened. Do we understand that? And so here was another lie that we were told in the Joey Aguilar situation, that this was his 6th year of eligibility. No, it wasn't. 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, 2026. Joe, he could have been here in college for 8 years. 8. Like, what is the argument? Someone please tell me what the argument is. So I see On3 posting he got denied his 6 year of eligibility. That literally is not true. It's not true. So I'm not trying to like point them out and point the finger at them, but at the same time, he started college in 2019. So like you can make this little graphic and say his 6 year was denied. No, it wasn't. No, it was not. I get he got a COVID year. I get he got a redshirt year. But he played 4 more years after that. He was going for an 8th year. 8. Joe, newsflash. You were still a teenager when he became a college football player.
No. 2019. That was... No, 2019 was my last season of college football.
But you were, okay. Well, you're 27.
I was 20 years old. No.
If you're 27 now.
I was 21. I was 21 at the time. 2019 was my last season of college football. 2016 was my first. 2016, 2017, 2018. 2019.
That's 8.
It's not 8 years.
8 years of eligibility: 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, 2026. It would have been his 8 year of eligibility.
You're confused.
That's where I'm going. I guess we're just Italians and horrible at math. Regardless,
apparently. Well, I know when I finished my college career.
Regardless of that, this could not pass. With that part being said, where does Tennessee turn? Is it a McIntyre? Is it a Raven? Like where do they turn here? I think that is more of a discussion piece because, quite frankly, Joey Aguilar was not a good quarterback, and I got destroyed for saying as much, saying he's a turnover-prone quarterback. And you remember Tennessee fans clipped this and put us on social media, and then he wound up going out and having 3 turnovers. You are better off. You might go through freshman growing pains. So what? That's on Heupel then. That's on Heupel. I mean, you put all your eggs into a couple of baskets and you missed.
So here's the thing with their quarterback situation, because this is the other layer with this. I do think that there is a likelihood that the Tennessee roster is better than last year. I think that their defense is going to be better. They brought in Chaz Coleman, who's going to be a big-time player. McIntyre, Faison Brandon, Ryan Staub are the 3 guys that are on the table.
Well, I understand that, and Mason Phillips, but no one's really counting that.
Yeah. McIntyre obviously has the edge because he's been there longer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is a silly take or not. I'm not saying that you punt on the season and that you just treat it like a rebuilding year. Last year was kind of like a rebuilding year. Heupel's had some bad luck, separate issue. I think that if Faison Brandon is at least close and maybe trailing McIntyre, I think that you start him. You were able to get to a college football playoff with incredibly shaky play from Nico. Really shaky play. He was a below-average quarterback. He looked like a young, inexperienced player who was hesitating. Faison Brandon is your future. Get him onto the field. I think that there's more value in this circumstance with looking ahead and trying to build towards winning a national title at some point in the next, let's call it 4 years of Faison Brandon's career. Getting him on the field and playing in an offense that I think that a lot of his issues could be masked, I think is a lot better for the direction of the program. I'm not saying that I've got anything against McIntyre. You know what? McIntyre was a decently highly recruited kid. He was a high 4-star. I think he was the 17th ranked quarterback in his class. Decent player. Maybe he does end up working out and he ends up being a really good starter. But I always come down to, if you're coming into a situation like this and you don't have an established, figured out quarterback, and you've got a battle between 2 youngsters, go with the more talented kid. Let him go out there. Let him go through the growing pains for the first couple of games. try and lean on your run game like you've done successfully in the past, like you did with Nico, and see if maybe he catches fire at the end of the season. That to me is where I think Tennessee should turn to.
It certainly wasn't to Joey Aguilar, and it's why you try to bring in Sam Levitt. Let's pull the Band-Aid right off. Mm-hmm. You didn't bring Sam Levitt in for a visit if you didn't think that Joey Aguilar or some of these other quarterbacks were ready.
Well, the biggest part with that is I think that's incredibly telling about McIntyre.
Well, that's exactly what I was about to say. If you thought McIntyre was ready, then why were you going after Sam Levitt?
Exactly. Or forget ready, good enough. Good enough to lead you to what you're trying to do.
Well, he's not ready. No true starting freshman, redshirted or true, is going to be completely ready for any of this. So, look, here's what I'd say too, and this is going to get me Tennessee fans mad. Here's the truth. You ready for it?
Mm-hmm.
Heupel has mismanaged rosters. He's mismanaged some situations, and he's going to have to figure that out, and he's going to have to figure it out quickly. All right, let's move on here. Joe, some horrible news is Jacarius Peak, who left NC State, now was going to be a starting tackle for South Carolina, a team that had been very much plagued with O-line, just really bad O-lines, but also you invested after you went in and saw a massive weakness. But Jacarius Peak, per Matt Zenitz of CBS, is reporting that it is feared that he has sustained a significant knee injury.
Mm-hmm.
There is a chance, because this happened in late February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, maybe October, maybe he will be able to come back here. With the new ways of college football and medicine, or college sports, or sports in general and medicine, ACLs don't normally take the 12 months is that like what I went through in a patellar tendon graft. With that being said, it's still a significant injury for South Carolina. Bringing in Kendall Briles and Lenora Sellers coming back to miss arguably one of the better tackles that was in the portal, and him sustaining a massive injury. It is brutal for him, and I hate it. This is gross.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like that there's just yet an established, like, what he injured. He was playing basketball, apparently, which is always, like, the most insanely frustrating headline to see. I mean, I had teammates that nobody that really got hurt playing basketball, but everybody does this during the offseason. Offseason starts, guys go and play on the main arena court, guys go play on the basketball team's courts. Every football program literally does this. Like, everybody just goes and tries to have fun. But if I'm a football coach, I'm telling everybody nobody's playing basketball, because it is the one sport where you've got these 6'6" dudes who are probably great athletes who aren't really built to be landing as a basketball player. They're just not built to be doing it. That's a separate issue. This is devastating for South Carolina. They brought in a lot of offensive linemen. A lot of times when we talk about transfer portal offensive linemen, there is inflation for a projection for those kids, because very rarely do the good kids enter the portal. Most of those guys end up coming back to school. Jacarius Peak, though, was a player who was in a different category. He is one of those guys that is actually physically gifted enough to go on to become a first-round pick caliber guy. I watched some of his tape this morning to get some good context. Kid can move. Kid can move really well. And that was the type of player that you needed at left tackle in order to get the most out of Lenora Sellers.
Because you're going to run the ball with Kendall Briles and what Lenora Sellers could do. That's the more brutal part of this.
This is incredibly, incredibly devastating, because there was no more important player for your team's success in 2026 than Jacarius Peak. Your offensive line was terrible last year. It was terrible. It was one of the situations across the country. It's been bad for 2 years, by the way. One of the situations across the country where bad O-line play stunted the growth of a young quarterback who had a lot of potential. This is a real big problem, man. If he can't go this year, and it's a Jermod McCoy type of a situation where You keep hearing he might be coming back, and then eventually he just kind of punts. South Carolina could be in some serious trouble. They needed him.
I don't know what else. I don't know what to say because I clearly don't disagree with what you're saying because of how bad they've been along their offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
But man, this isn't good. And you hate to see stuff like this. And I just feel like South Carolina just can't catch a break sometimes. But here's the truth for South Carolina fans, whether it's basketball, not women's, baseball, or football. Are you serious? Not AYS. I'm talking about, but are you serious? Are you serious about being elite? Because, again, I don't think that they're putting all of their best foot forward. And when they do, unfortunately, some situations like this happen. So we'll see. And to all of those players out there, Joe, a lot of these players have provisions in their contracts to where if you get hurt in another sport or doing something like that, that they're not going to pay you. Like there are things I know in contracts for NIL or TV rev share. If you ride a motorcycle, if you go skydiving, it's a lot like the Lloyds of London contracts. Like there are things that prevent you. So I hope that he didn't have anything in there like that. And if he did, that really stinks. All right. Yeah. Quick thought on Cignetti getting an extension, making him the highest paid head coach in the country.
We're going to need stuff to talk about tomorrow. Do you want to just save that for tomorrow?
We can save that for tomorrow. All right. Super chat before we get out of here. Shaquan says, Joe, you got to get into baseball. Yeah, I agree with Shaquan here, especially since yesterday LSU defeated Notre Dame 9-4.
Well, now I'm definitely not going to get into it. It's just waited.
LSU, I'm serious when I say this. LSU is the Alabama of baseball, though. You get what I'm saying? Like, but they are.
No, I'm aware as much as the only baseball team I pay attention to is LSU baseball because one, it's in my feed so often. Two, it affects the schedule of when we record, so I keep track of when the games are, of if we have to move certain shows up. But Blake, here's the problem, and I've said this before. Notre Dame baseball is not very good, and I'm not going to just start watching it. But they're not anymore.
Yeah, they're not
anymore. So it's like I'm a Notre Dame fan. I'm not going to just go and grab a new team and start rooting for a new. I just don't operate like that.
Hot take. There is no sport that is taken off more because of the draft being reduced. Joe, did you know that you have in spring training, like Ethan Fry? Ethan Fry is hitting third. He was on the national championship team for LSU last year. Mm-hmm. He's in the starting lineup for the Astros today in spring training.
That's nuts.
These dudes are coming out of everywhere, man. I'm just skins. You have Ethan Fry's situation. You have a lot of these other guys like Hagen Smith. All right. I'm just telling you. Grant says, your thoughts on the BS Lewis Moore situation with IU?
So this was tied to the article that I brought up in the middle when we were talking about Aguilar and the court cases. And this is, I don't think that the NCAA is going to bring the hammer on Indiana and try to make them vacate wins. I don't think that they will. I think that would cause some serious consternation. I'd like to read up on this a little bit more. I think it's a little bit more of just like a scare than it is a real threat, but we'll see what happens. It seems like this information came out for a reason.
Here's the problem, though, Joe. He was in his 7th year. And I don't disagree. Now, let me defend Indiana to the highest order. You made the statement after the season, and if you take shit away now, this eligibility thing is a joke. Here's another thing. Yeah. How are you going to take away something from Indiana when you barely did shit to Michigan? And we know for a fact they cheated. We know for a fact this isn't cheating.
This is an eligibility.
This is an eligibility thing. You mean to tell me that you knew for a fact? Joe, let me just throw this out there to you. We have Connor Stallions on the sidelines. What did we not find? What did we not find? Like, as an example, he admits to getting sideline passes for multiple other people. What games were they at? What games were they at?
How did we end up down this rabbit hole?
Because the last time that we had a national champion and the NCAA came and there was a thought about vacating wins or an eligibility issue or what for a national champion. Is there an asterisk? You know, you had a 7th-year guy here. How can you barely hit Michigan and now go after Indiana? You set a precedent of slapping them on the wrist. By the way, Michigan's got far more situations that went on that should have had a lack of institutional control. This is a one-player eligibility issue. Get out of here with me with that. Get out of here.
Yeah, I think that this is going to blow over. I can't imagine.
How about this? Accept it. Move on in the future. If it continues to happen, then we go there. Don't do stuff in the past because that's going to start pissing people off. It pissed me off. I mean, you can't do that. I mean, here's another thing. Why didn't you go after Carson Beck?
I don't know his eligibility situation off the top of my head. So
He's a 6-year player. He was a 6-year player. He was 24 years old. They're saying the red shirt and the COVID year is the issue here. Well, Lewis Moore had those same situations. And then he got a medical red shirt. So what eligibility issue?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Go look at Carson Beck. So why are you specifically pointing out Lewis Moore when multiples of these kids had the same situation going on? Are you going to take away wins or losses for guys at Ole Miss, for guys at Oregon, for guys here, there, everywhere that had these players?
Right. At the end of the day is that, like, I think that it would be a little bit of a far reach for them to do something like this. I don't think it's any hammer's going to get brought down. I don't see it happening.
I don't either. It would be a joke if it was. All right, we'll see y'all again tomorrow. Combine week.
Yes.
Indianapolis. All right.
If I make it there.
You'll make it there. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Peace.